Butcher them all. Butcher them all. A pathetic earther girl. Butcher them all.
What's going on, everyone? This is Ace and welcome back to The Reckoning. And today I'm very excited to discuss one of my favorite and more recent characters within the Lady Death universe, the relentless, sensual, bloodthirsty Hellwitch. And more specifically, we will be diving into her storyline, Hellwitch Hellborn. Now, this video right here was suggested by one of you awesome viewers, and so of course I am happy to oblige, and I hope you all really enjoy. But before we begin, as always, if the likes of Hellwitch, Lady Death, Dark Fantasy, or just manga and comics alike are of your interest, well, then stick around and join us here at The Reckoning. And while you're here, go ahead and give the video a like, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell as well so you don't miss out on our new content to come. I always appreciate each and every one of you showing the channel love, and so now, let's begin. So what you saw in the intro scene was the aftermath of the battle between the Hellborn Elder Council and the forces of Lady Death. The Hellborn Elders had reluctantly given the task of defeating Lady Death to our main girl here, Hellwitch. But it was Hellwitch who had pretty much demanded the job by a bold power move, for you see, it was due to her beheading one of the Hellborn Elders' strongest champions and delivering it straight to them, as well as controlling her own small army of Hellborn, that she was even allowed an audience and respect from the Hellborn Elders. But you may be wondering at this point who this Hellwitch character is. Why is she determined to be rid of Lady Death so badly? Well, to begin, at this point in the timeline, Hellwitch and Lady Death had already duked it out once before in a previous one-on-one battle. And unfortunately for her, the battle did not go in her favor, so she is itching for some payback. But besides revenge, her other motivation, and probably the strongest of the two, is her conviction. For you see, it's not just that she wants to destroy Lady Death and be rid of her presence in hell, but she truly believes that she is the one who must accomplish this. So now, after her defeat, she lies amongst the rubble and ruin, a defeated Hellwitch struggling to hold on to her life. The voices of the dark void calling to her. She lets her mind drift to her past, as if reaching out for something, anything, to hold on to. We're taken to quite possibly Hellwitch's first memory, birth. A dark and damp, grotesque scene where Hellborn are hatched. She refers to her hive as being a savage one, which, just to let you all know, Hellborn communities and or societies seem to be divided into what they call hives, all functioning in their own unique ways. Now, Hellwitch's hive comes across as somewhat primitive, as strength and bloodshed seem to take priority in their society. Since birth, Hellwitch, who mind you at this point was just a nameless Hellborn, she was given scraps and had to fight daily to survive. Once surviving the nest, she is introduced to her hive's caste system, and she is what is called a pit slave. A very low and pathetic role within the hive. Every day is a struggle for Hellwitch, and while her fellow Hellborn make constant attempts at her life, she always prevails. This struggle toughens her, hardens her, making her a survivor. Her role in her hive is to throw the cursed and defeated into a pit of liquid flesh where its inhabitants will choke on putrid blood and beg for oblivion. Day by day she looks into the pit of misery, and her only thought is, at least she isn't one of those poor bastards. It's not her time for the pit, at least not yet. She gazes off, and in the distance she can see her queen and some members of a higher status gathered at the center of the liquid flesh pit. It's the queen of this Hellborn hive and her royal circle, and while it's unclear exactly how, but it appears that as the queen she is allowed a type of royal prerogative, which would be to bathe in this blood and guts of these maimed and cursed. The bloody gut liquid seeps into her pores and allows her to absorb their life force and feeds her their power. Hellwitch locks eyes with the queen's shaman, named Drad. She turns away and begins to walk off, only to be blasted with an energy attack from behind, knocking her down to the ground. There, standing over her, are two members of the Hive Elite, a Hellborn named Ona, who is next in line to become the Hive Queen, and her bodyguard, Strong. Ona threatens Hellwitch, telling her to keep her eyes on the ground, as when she becomes queen, she won't be as forgiving. This low point in Hellwitch's life does something to her. This moment here, something awakens within her. You know, you go all your life suffering, dealing with pain and misery, and still even then, the privileged will kick you further down to remind you not to think or strive for better. It is enough. Hellwitch isn't like other pit slaves. She isn't consumed by her own troubles. She thinks on a much larger scale. She sees the defects and stubblings of the current hell. After some time passes, she sneaks over the royal pit bath, thinking and contemplating internally. Lucifer, demons, and even Lady Death. They twist and warp hell as if their own personal playground. The Hive Elite constantly fighting with each other in petty turf wars while being treated as second-rate in their own homeland. Hell is the rightful home for us, the Hellborn, not these demonic and earth outsiders. She then reflects on her own dissatisfaction with her status. I was never meant to be a slave. I should have been a warrior. The righteous fire of battle is all I ever dreamed of. Hellwitch proceeds to climb into the bath, and before submerging into the foul liquid, she thinks, I will die a slave unless I take my fate into my own hands. May the Hive protect me. First, she can feel the power flooding within her. She enjoys the sensation, but before long, it becomes too much. Too much. It's overwhelming. Her skin becomes pale and she can't take it anymore. She raises herself out and screams, only to black out and fall back into the liquid. She is awakened by a voice, and upon opening her eyes, witnesses something she has never experienced before. Sympathy. A notion that is all too rare within the realm of hell. Maybe it is because of this that Hellwitch becomes immediately drawn to it. The voice and sympathetic face, as Hellwitch would come to learn, belonged to another Hellborn slave named Gotha. Gotha explains that she is from a rival hive known as the Killzane, but was sold into slavery and was tasked to heal Hellwitch so that the queen could punish her while she was still alive. She mentions how taken aback she was that Hellwitch was able to survive the influx of power when in the queen's bath, but then has to leave wishing she could save her from the pain, both current and what awaits. Alone and chained, Hellwitch hangs there, possibly getting lost in her thoughts, trying to understand her existence, her anger, her role, and fellow Hellborn's role within all of hell, the place they call home. And as the days slowly bleed on, suddenly she sees the group of Hellborn assassins approaching. The assassins aren't coming for her, at least not directly. They are from a rival Hellborn hive called the Killzane. Suddenly Hellwitch feels a rage within her fire up, her blood begins to heat, and she breaks from her chains and demolishes the assassins. She speaks of the triviality of the Hellborn's constant inner fighting in their caste system, as she rips them apart until awakening from her rage spell, standing among the carnage, and wonders just how she, a pit slave, was able to take on so many formidable opponents. News of this reaches the Hellborn queen of the assassin's defeat and how the pit slave was the bringer of their demise. The queen decided to declare war against the Killzane hive, and instead of torturing Hellwitch, promoted her to a spear runner, which essentially was a higher class slave who would offer support to the hive's warriors. However, the hive's warriors are defeated by the Killzane. But with Hellwitch left behind, she uses her ingenuity to overrun the Killzane. She can feel the hatred and power from the previous outbursts return to her, no doubt from the fallen souls of the pit. She single-handedly defeats the Killzane and rescues her hive warriors from annihilation. The queen, however, would show her appreciation by demanding her death. But the queen's shaman Drad suggests, due to the lower caste Hellborns looking up to Hellwitch, that it might not be wise to simply kill her outright, but instead send her to the arena. Now, the arena plays an important role within our story for several reasons. First, it is where Hellwitch is reunited with Gotha. The two express their desires for one another, but are interrupted by the queen's shaman. And here is where we finally hear of the prophecy. The shaman, Drad, mentions that it is said that there would be a slave to rise up and usurp the winged queen and purge all of hell. He doesn't believe she is the one, however, and tells her to pray to the old gods. She takes his advice, but not to be a chosen one, but simply to survive. She enters the demon arena and begins the slaughter. Hellwitch slowly wins the crowd's favor and satisfies their bloodlust. Her powers awake just as before. As she gets ready to finish off one of the demon's champions, the queen, observing and not wanting to anger the demon nobility by having their champion killed, orders Hellwitch to stop. So, Hellwitch cuts off the head of the demon champion and is finally here where she claims her title. her name as Hellwitch. The crowd erupts, chanting her name. The demon noble turns to the queen and simply states, either she pays for that action or you pay for it. Later that night, Gotha and Hellwitch celebrate and are once again together and become intimate, with each other sharing a night of passion before falling asleep in each other's embrace. Suddenly the door busts open. It is Strom of the Hellborn Elite along with Demon Noble we saw earlier from the arena. They do not take kindly to Hellwitch embarrassing them as Hellwitch jumps up to protect Gotha as she is blasted and knocked unconscious. The Demon Noble simply states, "Now we know how to hurt you." Hellwitch awakens to the most painful sight she could ever look upon. Her lover Gotha, or what remains, has been cut in two, with her upper hands tied to the rocky terrain. Hellwitch lets out a "this can't be happening, please no, no." Gotha, barely hanging on, states, "Don't worry my love, even if it takes 1,000 years, I'll come back to you." She's immediately gutted by Strom and killed in front of Hellwitch. The queen and demon nobility laugh, amused by Hellwitch's suffering. Hellwitch states, "You'll burn. I swear you all will fucking burn for this." It's decided she will be thrown into the very pits in which she used to be a slave to. She is tied and bound, but before being casted off, Ona, the next in line to be the Hellborn Queen, states that she will make sure the word gets out that Gotha was killed by Hellwitch herself, and it is then finally she is thrown into the pit. She wanted her lies to tarnish what Gotha and I shared together, to torment me, to haunt my endless time in the pits. But the twisted whore made one mistake. I wouldn't drown in despair. I would be filled with hate. Sometime later, within the Hellborn Queen's castle, the Hellborn Queen is still entertaining the demon nobility, until an unexpected guest arrives. The head of the shaman Drad is thrown into their midst, and the queen yells, "You! Impossible, the pit should have held you for a millennia." Hellwitch reveals herself, and it sounds like before Drad died, he confessed that the prophecy was indeed true, and that Hellwitch was the slave to which would rise and claim the Winged One's throne to purge all of hell. One by one, she goes, killing Hellborn royalty and demon nobility alike. Nothing will keep her from her revenge. Drones and drones of guards flock to her to protect the Hellborn Queen, but they are all to be slaughtered. There was no more talk, no more bravado. Only rage and steel and fire. Until it's just them, the queen pathetically tries to bargain with Hellwitch to spare her life as she can see oblivion slowly approach. She is horrified. The castle ablaze in flames with no survivors, save one, a single Hellborn pit slave, who rose from the foul gutters of hell to dethrone the winged queen, and who will purge hell with sacred fire. For this is the prophecy of Hellwitch. And that is the origin of our girl Hellwitch. I hope you guys really enjoyed this story, but also this character, as I think she is gorgeously striking, as well as memorable in her ferocity and determination. And then you add this story into the mix, giving this character purpose and well-rounded set of emotions. By far, she is my favorite character within the current Coffin and Lady Death universe. And her stories continue to be my most anticipated yearly. But how about all of you? Had you heard of Hellwitch, and would you like to know more? She has several tales herself, and in fact, at the time of this video being made, I believe her most recent chapter, Hellwitch Bitchcraft, should have just begun on Kickstarter. So by all means, now would be the perfect time to catch up on her tales, and if watching at some time in the future, then I'll still say, I still encourage you to go and look into the character, as it's a wild ride that you won't want to miss. I think that's where I'll leave it here. Thank you all so much for watching, and always, until next time, take care. We see a victorious Hellwitch emerge from ruin and flames, the head of the decapitated queen in her hands. Despite overcoming her enemies, surviving as she always does, she falls to her knees, and only one thing comes to her mind. Gotha. Such carnage, such destruction. You must be so very tired. A voice from above speaks to Hellwitch. She is not alone. She looks up to see Seance. You want to restore order, bring glory to Hellborn. Simply take my hand and I swear, you shall never bow again.